Hey guys, this is Justin. Hello and welcome to another video. As you are no doubt aware, Andor episodes 1 through 3 released today, and wow, there's a lot to talk about. I gave my full spoiler-free review yesterday on the channel. I'll link to that video in the upper right-hand corner if you want to watch it. Today, however, I want to go a bit deeper into the actual plot and discuss a few moments that I thought were really key. Things that stood out to me and that I would really be focusing on moving forward, or at least Easter eggs that I thought were fun in one case. So the way I'm going to do this is I've selected 3 key scenes that I'm going to discuss in detail. Those being the crash of the Separatist or Republic ship on Andor's home planet, the montage to end episode 3, and a look at some of the spacecraft featured in the 3 episodes. Alright, so let's start with what I think is by far one of the most interesting things that people are not talking about. Of course, much of the first 3 episodes is spent dealing with flashback to Cassian, or Cass's youth, on the planet Kenobi. He of course is separated by his sister because of his participation in an event which is quite interesting. A ship of unknown origins crashes on the planet. And if you're saying, Eck, what do you mean unknown origins? It's referred to specifically as a Republic ship, and the officers are named by Marva and her gang as Republic officers. That is 100% true. However, there's some oddities here. The biggest thing is that the officers have the CIS patch on their uniform. This isn't a small mistake. This isn't something that could slip by editing and all the other eyes watching the show. There are clear shots of the uniforms of the officers, and they very clearly have the CIS roundel on their shoulders. But there's something even more interesting in this scene. What's up with their skin? When I watched this the first time, I assumed that these might be some sort of humanoid aliens, but why would the ship have an entire crew of one alien species? And I also noticed that if you look back, you can see that the ship and the bits of the ship on the ground are leaking a gas. A gas which is approximate in color to the faces and skin of the troopers and officers on board. So I've developed a pretty wild theory, and some of you may be familiar with the story of Honegger from Star Wars Legends. I talked about this today in my X-Clips video. Anyway, in Star Wars Legends, Honegger was the planet of the Nogri, and there was a really terrible cataclysm that occurred during the Clone Wars. Essentially a separatist Lucrehulk carrying a bioweapon known as Trihexylphene 1138 crashed on the surface, essentially rendering the planet almost inhospitable. Now, I don't think this is a one-to-one connection, but I think it's very possible that that ship contained some sort of bioweapon, which could also explain why the troopers on board responded so aggressively to the children. If not a bioweapon, perhaps just some sort of other really deadly agent or chemical. However, that doesn't explain the weird differences in uniform. I think there's something very interesting going on there. Again, I don't think it's a mistake. Somebody watching the show would have noticed that before it aired, and that's something that could be fixed very easily, at least by Disney standards, in post-production if it truly was a costuming error. No, I think that this was probably meant to be, by the Empire most likely, a false flag operation against the CIS. This could have been something that occurred in the very late stages of the Clone Wars, with the Empire looking to vilify the CIS, maybe even cover up whatever's happening on the planet, those mining operations, through the bioweapon, which would also explain why already Cassian has a hatred to the Empire. I mean, that could also be explained by the fact that he lives on this planet where he's being harassed by corporate goons and forced to live in this life of what seems like semi-servitude. This is just a theory, but I definitely think there's a lot more going on in that scene. Rewatching the scene while editing, there's just a couple of things I want to add. For one, Marva and the gang all have gas masks and they're wearing it, indicating that they know what's going on. We know that Cassian's been described sometimes as being a part of the CIS from a young age. I wonder if they know more than they're letting on. Also, the one guy who survives the crash is also wearing a mask, kind of indicating again that yes, it was a toxic substance. Anyway. Alright, the next thing that I want to talk about is the end of episode 3, because this was about as perfect a 20 minutes or so of Star Wars TV that you can possibly get. The greatness of the scene really comes down to Kyle Soller, who plays Cyril Karn, one of the corporate goons and really the head of the corporate goons. He's such a compelling character because he's very different than what we get with the usual Imperials. For one, he's not directly propping up the Empire, although, as even he recognizes, corporate security is is really the first bit of defense for the Empire, especially in this part of space. But he truly believes he's doing the right thing. And I mean, he is. Should Cassian be shaken down by corporate security guys? Obviously not. But I mean, gunning down 2 men, or at least gunning down one execution style and killing the other in a fist fight in the back alleys behind a brothel is probably not the right thing to do. So Syril Karn is really doing the right thing by hunting him down and by living up to his code of honor. Now, obviously, he's not doing the right thing by sort of helping to prop up this corporate fascist system that he's a part of, but that's sort of a deeper character flaw. He believes in order and he thinks he's doing the right thing. And then he takes his buddies into battle, and despite his best efforts, it goes horribly wrong to a point that he can't even really comprehend. I love the scene where he's just trying to come to terms and get past what happens. I don't know if it's a realistic depiction of PTSD or, you know, the kind of trauma that you'd experience during a scene like this, but it was certainly compelling to watch. And I also think it's interesting because we're going to see most likely Syril Karn radicalized by what he sees and what sort of is really an act of terror. I'm wondering whether he's going to get so far into the Empire or into hunting Andor that he realizes that the Empire isn't really upholding law and order either, or whether he's going to get so bloodlusted and so interested in revenge that all else is going out the window. Either way, I can definitely see him being an interesting mirror, perhaps, to a Saw Gerrera. Also an interesting contrast to Dedra Meero, who we're going to see next episode, who's definitely much more into the Empire for a sense of pride and for personal achievement more than anything else. I just really appreciate how deep of a character he is already. Probably my favorite new one introduced in the show, alongside his other corporate security allies. I mentioned this, I think, in my review, but I especially liked Sergeant Kostek as well. He's very, very interesting, and I'm curious to see what happens with him. All right, so I want to finish this video off briefly by talking about ships. I'm not going to go over everything I saw in the background. I need more time to look at that. I did, however, notice the Ghost, or not actually the Ghost, but a VCX 100, which I'm not seeing a lot of people talk about. There was one in the junkyard. I really like how Cassian's ship he has at the beginning has the engines of a Y-Wing. Then the Y-Wing in the junkyard is missing its engine, so it's sort of an ugly there where they probably couldn't find the proper engines for that freighter, and it was more valuable than the Y-Wing, so they cannibalized the other ships they had in their scrapyard. Really cool. I really like Luthen's ship as well, and we'll see more of that next episode, so I'm not going to focus on it a whole lot. One thing that was really neat, though, was the TAC pods. These are basically the Corpo's version of the LAT. Obviously, the LAT can travel in space over short distances, as is the case with the TAC pods. I really like the transport. It reminded me a lot of like the V-Wing transport we saw in Dark Empire, where V-Wings could technically launch, maybe not from space, but from very high up in the atmosphere. But to actually move from planet to planet, they need this larger thing with a hyperdrive and whatever else. Really nice detail there. Very practical too. I also liked how there were more spots for more troops, so it wasn't perfectly situated for the mission they were going on, but it was what they had. Anyway, those are my brief thoughts on some of the details I really liked from Andor episodes 1 through 3. What did you think of the show? Did my review ring true for you from yesterday, or were you more excited about the show, hotter on the show, or a bit more cold? Let me know all of that and more down below. Till next time, guys, be safe, have a good one, may the Force be with you.